On to the shed.
Imaginary hat nod. Oh, man. All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to begin here momentarily. If you can ensure your cell phones are off or on silent, and council members ensure your microphones are turned on. All right, today is January 27th, 2025. Today is a regular legislative meeting of Barberton City Council. Before we jump into the regular legislative meeting, we do have individual committee meetings this evening. So we will start with City Properties, Parks and Recreation with Mr. Easterly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, January 27th at 6:01 in council chambers. All members present and those listed on the sheet. Request for legislation, we have nothing at this time. We have pending legislation. Enter into contract KICO, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with KICO to hold an auction to sell items remaining in the 107 5th Street building before the building is demolished and declaring an emergency. It passed and was moved to the floor. With that, I yield back.
All right. We'll go with that. Actually, you're going to need a motion to adjourn.
Need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
We have a second.
I will second that.
Thank you. (6:03) we adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Easterly. All right, next up, Public Safety, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today's Monday, January 27th, 2025. It's 18:03 p.m. Myself as chair, Mr. Easton as co-chair, Rebecca Gearhart, Justin Greer. All other council members are present, and guests as noted on my sheet. We have one request for legislation. A letter from Jamie Eisman, Safety Director, requesting legislation to amend ordinance number 69-2024 to reflect a new total of $508,932.25. One reading and emergency wording requested. This would be for the radios. There's an overage on installation of $3,031.02. So we're going to increase it to $508,932.25 from $505,901.23. Any questions? Ms. Thompson, do you have a question? No? Can I get a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passed. Anything from my committee? Anything from the body? Other council members? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We are adjourned at 18:05.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. All right, next up is Rules Marketing Development. Ms. Gearhart.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to call the Rules Marketing and Development Committee to order. It is Monday, January 27th, 2025. It is 6:06 p.m. and we are in council chambers. All members of my committee are present, including myself as chair, Mrs. Beck as co-chair, Mr. Heidick, and Mr. Greer, and all others are noted on my sheet. I have one new request for legislation at this time, a letter from Miss Lori Reese-Price requesting legislation to approve the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various component codes of the Barberton codified ordinances and repeal ordinances and resolutions that are in conflict. We did this last year, and I believe we will do it every year moving forward. Did anybody have any questions on this or how it works? Seeing none, can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have one piece of pending legislation, the second reading of ordinance 2-2025, entering into contract with House & Stop Architects. And this is to go into the schematic drawings. I know Mr. Dotson sent out an email kind of talking about this. Did everybody get a chance to read that and look over it? So, and he and I got to talk, not 2 days ago Saturday, but the week before. And, you know, I just shared some of the things that I had shared at council also for that. So, don't think we need to do anything with that as a second reading. And then I have a very special guest with me this evening. Melanie with Main Street is going to join us and talk a little bit about what Main Street has been up to and the exciting year ahead. Thank you.
All right, so I want to give an update. Just in the past, Main Street has been in existence for about 1.5 years now. And for those of you that may not be familiar with our organization, just briefly, what was done in the beginning was a inventory of our downtown buildings and businesses that are in our Main Street boundaries, which is 2nd Street Northwest and West Tusk. We did conduct an inventory of the downtown buildings and businesses to identify the number of vacant buildings and also the number of businesses, which we currently have 72 businesses in the downtown within the boundaries, and we have the capacity to add another 33 more businesses downtown, giving us 33 approximate vacant buildings and/or units, because some of the buildings have multiple units within them. Go ahead and move over to the small business. And then on that too, we also worked with the city to look at the current ordinances around the vacant properties, and that's something that we're currently reviewing with regards to the vacant buildings that are downtown. We also are looking, we've had the fire inspections done downtown, and then also working with the building department to have the building inspections done as well to ensure all the buildings downtown are covered, and that they all have current occupancy permits, which is required by the state of Ohio. Next, the small business meetings. So we provide small business education. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. To the small businesses. The past year we held 7 small business meetings, and some of the things that we talk about in those small business meetings is the Facebook marketing and small business ownership. We had presenters come out for that. We also had the Barberton Community Development Corporation out to speak on loans. We had the Barberton CDBG grant opportunities with the former planning director. Barberton Community Foundation also did a report on the grants that are available to the downtown businesses. We had SCORE, we had Small Business Development Center, we had Bounce Innovation Hub out to speak to our small businesses to provide information on small business support and resources. Also, we had specialists out on marketing your business. Grow with Google, we had a Google representative come out, and also a business professor and social media expert. She's talked further on Google resources. And we also had the introduction of the new Ward 4 City Councilwoman, Emily Beck, at one of our meetings to introduce her to our small businesses. So we continue to operate the small business meetings, and we have expanded it beyond our Main Street boundaries, and we're now offering that to all small businesses in Barberton because we understand the benefit of these business resources that are offered. And again, these are free to anyone who is a small business owner that wants to learn more about marketing their business and just what's available in Barberton, period. You can go ahead and move on. And so we do get feedback. So as we work in the community, we want to get feedback from those small businesses. So we did do a quick survey to the small businesses that attended our meetings, and we did ask them if they found the topics that were discovered, such as marketing grants, loans, social media, that we discussed. 100% of them said yes, they do find that they are impactful and important. We also asked the businesses, if you have attended these meetings in the past, were they helpful for you? And we had 33% say not applicable to them. We had 60% say yes, and no, 6.7% said it did not affect them one way or the other. Also got some great feedback from the businesses. You can go ahead to the next slide. Probably hard to read up there. I'll just quickly read one. I think the meetings are a great idea. From what I have gathered, most downtown businesses are hard to get to participate in events and meetings. We do appreciate you and everything Main Street Barberton does. Just keep trying different things. I'm glad you're in town. Our town has the program. Thank you. The Google profile training you shared was great. Main Street Barberton office is very helpful, and these meetings are great. So that's just some of the feedback on the small business meetings that we hold downtown. Next, DORA. So Main Street Barberton does oversee the DORA in the downtown. Just to give you a couple updates on that, and again, the marketing on that and the promotion. We spent last year in cups, we spent $5,073 on the cups to purchase them. Also with the marketing, the flyers that we do. We also created several videos. You can go ahead and go to the next page. So that's a flyer, that's the cup that we had designed. We did a YouTube video, which is shared with all the alcohol businesses that do have the DORA. We created a video for them, a training video, and then as you can see in the top right, we have the boundaries, and so we create posters and different materials to get out there. We did add 2 new DORA locations this year. We added the Leader Toffel and also the Hungarian Club. They're now approved DORA vendor locations, so I trained them. We generated just over $6,291 in the DORA Cup sales, so total profit for Main Street was a little over $1,200. So not making a lot of money on them, but basically the money that we put into them is basically coming back out in the advertising that we do for DORA. And we spend about 50 hours this past year on the DORA services, so that's something that my office oversees and does. All right. And we partnered with the city. We identified some spaces that we could add some outdoor seating. So in the center there where the Alexander Commons is, and also other locations on Tusk, you'll see some new outdoor seating area. We've also are now decorating the old Marshall's building, just trying to beautify the downtown, make it look a little more friendly out there. And then also we worked with the city of Barberton to pilot 2 of the parklets that you saw on Tusk. Got some great feedback on that, and so we'll be adding 2 more parklets on 2nd Street next year. The monthly cleanups. Last year, we collected 45 bags of garbage from our downtown sidewalks, our vacant lots, and our buildings and alleyways. And we spent 24 hours dedicated to the downtown cleanup, and we used over 72 volunteers for that. And that's actually a cost savings to the city of $803. Of time that was picked up and cleaned the downtown. Beautification and accessibility. So you might see the flower pots that are downtown now. Those flower pots, you can keep going on. One more. We have 20 flower pots that were funded through Main Street Barberton. Those were $4,000. And we purchased the flower pot and also the flowers with 2 flower changes, and we were able to get sponsors for those, and so they are covered by the small businesses, and then we hope to get new sponsors for the 2025 year to cover the cost of the flowers this year. But again, ways to beautify the downtown, and through Main Street funding that and trying to make our downtown better. Wayfinding. So one of the issues that we've identified is that a lot of businesses are not known downtown, and again, they're not in a position to necessarily advertise or have a marketing budget. And so we put together a map of our downtown where every business in the boundary is identified, and also all the parking lots in the downtown so people know where to park. This will be printed and put out across Barberton. So anyone who goes to a restaurant or goes to a store can find that map, and it's a way to notify them of where they're going when they come downtown. And we'll be distributing to at events as well. And then we also created the 2025 schedule list that you see that was handed out. And then we also have our tents, our little A-frame tents that you see at the businesses now, which encourage people to come downtown. They can scan that QR code and it shows them what events are happening downtown, and takes them to our website. And then we're going to get into, go ahead one more, we're going to talk a little bit about the promotions. So we are doing podcasts. We appear on Heartfelt Radio Station, just had me on again this morning to talk and share the updates that are going on in downtown Barberton with regards to events and also grants. I mentioned we have a Dora video out there. So in addition to podcasts, we put stuff out on YouTube. So we have lots of videos going out right now to encourage people to learn about us. And then, as I mentioned, the radio station ads. We've also created, on the next slide, some commercials. So currently we are playing at Lake 8 Movie Theater, where we paid for advertising to show our downtown, what's there, what's available. And so we have that running right now. It's been operating for a few months. If you go down there, you're going to hear the commercial. It shows you some of the bars and restaurants that are downtown, some of the activities that are available, the White Rabbit Galleries, just all the different venues that you can go to for entertainment as well. So that's playing. We also did a video to come downtown, again on showing that bottom left. That was a drone video that we did to enhance the downtown. We also created a calendar of events for our downtown to show what events are happening. And then we also put out a This Week Downtown on our Facebook page. So every week we display every event that's happening downtown if we know about it. So if the businesses give us the information, we post and share what events are occurring in our downtown each week and remind the businesses of that. This building is not empty, it's full of opportunity. So you're probably seeing quite a few of those around downtown right now in our vacant buildings. This is a poster that we created and printed and gave to any building owner that was interested in renting and or selling their property. And so you're seeing those downtown right now, encouraging people to consider buying or renting a place. And they can either call me or go to our website, and it lists the building information and what's available in our downtown. So we're tracking all the available buildings. You can go ahead to the next. Events and community engagement, go ahead one more. Just to kind of share with you, so this past year we had over 3,000 people down for all of our second Saturdays. We had 156 people attend our Sip and Paints at Cave. We had our first annual Magic City Arts and Music Festival with about 1,500 people coming down for that. And so what we're told with regards to Main Street National is that the ROI based on $20 per person, they say that on average, a person coming to your downtown is going to spend about $20 per person. So that's a $63,000 investment for those coming downtown, because they're either getting a drink, they're stopping to get something to eat, they might start shopping. So that money of people coming downtown is helping our community. And just to give you a little bit of feedback from the Art and Music Festival, our first event that we held this past year, M&M, you can go ahead to the next one. M&M Tap House reported an increase of sales from the previous, so I had them do the previous Saturday and also the previous year. So our Art and Music Festival was held on a Saturday. That previous Saturday, they saw a 102% increase because of the Art and Music Festival that weekend. They also saw a 129% increase from the previous year on that Saturday. So over 100% on that day because of the Art and Music Festival. Ignite Brewing Company saw an increase in sales by 67% compared to the week before and 63% from the previous year. The Little Dragons Hoard, located on 2nd Street, Matt stated, "I did more business at the Art and Music Festival than I did in the last 3 months of sales." So again, we get feedback from the businesses when we hold events to show whether or not we're making an impact in the downtown. Go ahead and go on to the next one. So we're going to talk a little bit briefly about the economic revitalization efforts. Keep going on. Okay, so these are the new businesses that we brought downtown. So we brought the only one in Summit County, Pedal Pub, into Barberton, and so we're very, very happy to have him on board. So that's a picture of Brian, the owner of the Magic City Pedal Pub, and you can see the story was also featured in the Akron Beacon Journal, so we're happy to have him.
That's city council riding around, by the way.
Oh, that was? I didn't even look at the picture.
Yeah, that's all of us.
All right, well, you got to experience that then. So, yeah, so we were happy to bring him in, and again, we're the only one in Summit County that has this, and so we're definitely marketing that. You can go ahead and go on to the next. So these are some additional businesses that we brought in this past year, and then just some more businesses as you go on to the next page. These are the ribbon cuttings of those businesses. So happy to bring in 5 new businesses over the past year. The small business support and education. So one of the things that we identified is that we wanted to make it easier for a business to come into Barberton. And we found some documents that might be helpful to a business. And so with the city, in partnership with the city, we identified a project success checklist, which is now given to any potential business owner if they're thinking about coming into Barberton. This is one of the first documents I give them, along with our small business guide, which will be on the next page. But basically it tells them what they need to do from start to finish. So from the time that they're thinking about starting a business, with regards to zoning, getting the fire inspection, building inspection, occupancy permits, all that process is laid out easily now that they can go to and kind of do a checklist instead of guessing and wondering and calling, and they have it right there in front of them. The small business guide is like a 19-page guide, which again tells them from step 1 to step 100 what needs to happen to start your small business in Barberton, anywhere from the utilities that you would need to turn on, to grants, to resources, funding, and also the process of what the city of Barberton requires to become a business. So that's something that is currently out and again given to anyone who says they're interested in starting one. We also created a campaign of Build Your Business in Barberton, Why Barberton? And so we put a flyer out now that we're posting publicly to encourage other businesses who maybe want to expand into Barberton, maybe they're in another city. So we put that out as well as to why someone would want to come to Barberton and start a business. Lastly, I just want to put out there that the municipal government is the biggest benefactor of a Main Street program. So this is from the National Main Street Organization. Overall, you can see it's going to increase the tax base, more tourism, increased property values, and just the list goes on about why the Main Street is beneficial to the municipal government and why public sector should want to continue to fund Main Street. Obviously, it's a dedicated effort to economic development, leveraging private sectors. I can tell you that if you want to go on to the, is that it? The last one? Okay. So last year we were able to generate another $181,000 in sponsorships, donations, and in-kind support. So we leveraged the money that was given to us to operate as Main Street and have since been able to add more funding to it that we're using through sponsorships and also in-kind. So that's it. And then, on a personal note, we made the media this year, so I was named Top 50 Women Leaders of Ohio for 2024, and also the Top 50 Women Leaders of Cleveland for 2024, so also got some media press out of that as well, so just wanted to share that information as well. In your packets, you have celebrating our achievements. Those are just some of our achievements over the past year, so you have a copy of that to look at. Then I'm also going to just quickly pass out, and this is more of just, these are just samples that you can just sort of pass along, take a look at them, pass along. These are our upcoming events, samples of 2 of our upcoming events. The one is our 7-day challenge, which is you spend $7, it's 7 businesses in 7 days. You're going to be entered into a drawing to win $150 gift cards and gifts. So that's our next event coming up, so we're pushing that out. And you can see attached to that is the passport that someone would complete. They stamp it, so when they go to that business, they get stamped if they spent the $7, and they return it to me at the end of that week, and they get entered into that drawing. And then we also have the Girl Scout Cookie Walk, which is coming up in March. That's a paid event, again, to help generate some revenue for Main Street Barberton, also supporting the Girl Scouts. And so, yeah, so we have that event coming up as well in March, so. Thank you. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I just want to, one, thank you for coming in again. Two, having volunteered at a lot of the events last year and being on the committee for Labor Day, like, just the amount that goes into a second Saturday or a special event. And it feels like that's 10% of what you've accomplished and done. Like, all the things that you've brought to benefit not just the downtown, but all the businesses. It's just, I personally appreciate all that you're doing, and thank you for that. And I can't fathom that top 50, it's probably like top 5, top 1. So, thank you for all you're doing.
Like I keep saying, you're definitely a blessing to Barberton. We're lucky to have you.
Does anybody have any questions or?
Same, you know, you and I have worked together. I go to the small business meetings when I can. Every single time there's
Yes.
something there for me. And I love that you've opened it up to any business. If anybody's listening out there, anybody in the gallery, tune into now that there's Zoom, it's awesome. Every single time I get something out of it. But I will say, if people have been wondering how to get involved, how to get your ideas out there, go see Melanie. I mean, the fresh ideas coming out of there, and, you know, you need more help. You need more hands, you need more money, you need more of everything. These programs work. And to revitalize this town, this program works. So I am so much behind it. I'm so excited. I cannot wait to see where this goes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and on that, I know last year, Monty and I had reached out with a lot of our businesses on Worcester Road that were like, what should we do? Can we have fresh ideas? Is there any help? And Melanie quickly opened up the small business meetings to them, and they've been attending and benefiting from it. So it was huge. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any miscellaneous from my committee or the rest of the council? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
We'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:27 PM.
Thank you, Ms. Gerhart. Next up is City Utilities with Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities, I'd like to call this meeting to order today, January 27th at 6:29. We're in council chambers. All members of my committee are present. Myself as chair, Jennifer Hager, Emily Beck, and Justin Greer, and all others members. We have no request for legislation tonight, but we do have pending legislation. We have enter into contract North Bay Construction Incorporated, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with North Bay Construction Incorporated in the amount of $717,288 for the return sludge pump station improvements at the wastewater treatment plant, WWTP, and declaring an emergency. This was voted on, come out of committee last week, and we will be voting on that tonight. Do I have any miscellaneous discussion from the council gallery? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Wait, Mr. Griffin.
Yes. Mr.
I just want to thank the water department guys. They've been busting their butts the last several days, I guess. Water main breaks everywhere.
Nonstop.
A lot on the west side. But I want to send out some big kudos to those guys. They've, you know, when it's 5 degrees out and they're in a hole getting wet, I don't want that job.
They deserve all the congratulations. They had a massive job on my street. They flooded everything. That's a good comment, Mr. Harris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anybody else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Emily. We are adjourned at 6:32 at our pass.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Last but not least, Finance and Personnel. Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. It is Monday, January 27th, 2025, 6:31 PM here in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, which includes myself as chair, Mr. Heidick, Mr. Griffin, and President Greer. All other council members are also present, as well as guests as noted on my agenda sheet. We have several pieces of pending legislation. The first being ordinance 11-2025, title Authorized Payment Atlantic Emergency Solutions. This is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Atlantic Emergency Solutions in the amount of $3,926.79 for emergency repairs for Engine 3 and declaring an emergency. Are there any remarks about this one? Okay. Resolution 12-2025, titled Grant Application. A resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton supports and authorizes the mayor to apply to the Barberton Community Foundation for a grant towards the City Justice Center project in the amount of $100,000 and declaring an emergency. Are there any remarks?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there a stipulation of what part of that money can be spent on what part of the Justice Center? How is it going to be worded as far as how it can be spent? My question is, does it have to go towards schematics? Because that's kind of the thing that's up on the docket right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it something that can be used for anything else involved in that process?
That's a great question. Mayor?
No, it would go specifically for the schematics.
Okay. And is there an expiration on that as far as when it needs to be spent by?
They typically want their money spent within the year,
Okay. So we have a calendar year, okay.
which should not be a problem in accomplishing that.
Ms. Gerhart?
I know we were a little out of order on this. We're on track now. Do we already have the 100,000, or this is just to apply to get the 100,000?
This is authorizing the application to be made to the foundation, but if I'm wrong, Mr. Flaker, do you have something here?
We received the 100,000 already. We received it at the very end of last year, beginning of this year sometime. We received $100,000 already.
Okay, so just to be clear, it was already applied for, you just didn't have council's blessing to do so. Okay.
I don't know that it was applied for. I think they just gave it to us.
No, so I missed a step in the haste of the end of the year. If you recall, I submitted some legislation to the Finance Committee for the Justice Center, and then at the last minute, I asked for it to be pulled. We had some other funding that had been approved through City Council and some other things going on. Foundation called me up and said, hey, we've got an extra $100,000, has to be spent this year. It goes back into the bucket and falls under the spending limitations. So I applied for the funding, missed a step of coming to council, and that's my apology. Went to the foundation with the grant application for schematic design. It was approved, the money was then sent over to the city and is in our coffers.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions? Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Chair. Given that, are we suspending on the second reading of the ordinance coming out of your committee, Councilor Gerhart?
No.
Now that we have the money?
Tonight was supposed to be the second reading, but that's what I was going to suggest once we get there. Since we already have it, I'm comfortable voting on it tonight if you are.
I actually think we should wait on that, unless we're ready to talk about it whenever you get to it on your agenda.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple more, and then we'll get to it.
Okay. Just, I don't want to take you out of order and then we
No, you're
like go
fine.
back or something.
Yeah. Okay. All right, next up, we've got ordinance number 13-2025, presented by Mrs. Beck and myself. Title, enter into contract Haywood Electric, Inc. for Second Street festoon lighting. This is authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with Haywood Electric, Inc. for Second Street festoon lighting. Install for a total bid cost of $122,380.25. And declaring an emergency. Are there any remarks about this?
I got a question.
Mr. Easterly, go ahead.
Thank you, is there any sidewalk being torn up, things of that nature that will go above and beyond the 122? So is Haywood is all-inclusive? He puts the lights in, fixes whatever, trenches whatever, so there's no other cost associated?
This is just for the install of the lights. We are working with Ohio Edison, who I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, with the removal of the poles.
Yeah, First Energy is going to remove the poles. That's a $18,000 contract, I believe. This $122,000 is it's to purchase some of the LED lights, the poles and street lights. He'll do all the install with this contract. So it'll be turnkey after he's done out there, that we'll have color changing LED lights and LED street lights in that area.
So the turnkey is 140 and not 122? If I heard that correct. You said 18 plus the 122?
So what's the question?
18,000 plus 122, or is it 122 turnkey or 140 turnkey?
The separate contract with First Energy is not part of that legislation.
Okay, so it's
That
140
that
for
was
the lights.
separate to get them authorized to start planning for the removal of the existing poles.
So a
Thank you.
grand total is roughly 140. By the time you pay for the poles and then pay for Haywood, that's where we're at.
For those two items.
Are there any other items involved?
Can I touch base on this a little bit? So this is just to continue our efforts of revitalizing the downtown. So Ohio Edison currently right now owns those poles that are down there. They're not allowing us to attach lights or do any maintenance to those, so we have to have them removed. So that is step one. So step two would be having Haywood come in and after removing those lights, putting lights back up and then allowing us to hang our banners and our planners and our lights and start that festoon lighting to connect both streets. So this is a phased approach, but the one is going to be the electrical company removing their poles that they won't let us touch anymore. And then Haywood installing the ones that we are required to have down there with the extra LED lights.
Are they the same ones that we have here on Tusk? Like, as far as the LED, I don't know what we have currently.
So the ones on Tusk are not color changing. The ones on Second Street can be made to look like that same color, but then there's also programming that you can put holiday or event colored lights.
It's like purple.
That can change, yeah, so it can be pre-programmed.
Mrs. Miller's got something, sorry, Mr. Harrison.
Oh, this is great. To be clear, we cannot have one piece of legislation with 4 contractors.
Right.
So
Yeah.
each contract has to be let separately. So it's not a case of wanting to show how much this is and how much this is, and then you have to do addition. You can definitely do addition, but we can't have a contract to be with First Energy, a contract with Haywood, a contract in one piece of legislation. So they always have to be separate.
Right, thank you. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Has anybody went down Second Street and looked at it? Have you looked at the light poles? Some are 90-degree poles, some are 45, some are rusted out.
Yeah,
It's much needed.
yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like, I can't say it in council, but crap.
Oh, you can.
No, it's in the rules, we can't.
I'm not
Watch
gonna say
yourself.
that. It does. It looks like I said, it looks like crap.
Yeah, I think it really makes a difference, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
It's a whole different atmosphere being on Tusk. How many pictures I see, with how big social media is anytime anyone's downtown, and I'm guilty of it too. is nice snow. I walk out of council and there's just like snow on the road and the lights are on, like, it's awesome. So I think that'll be really nice. And I know this is unrelated, but we talked about a similar lights around Lake Anna, so I think that'll tie everything together really well.
And a side note, if that's okay, we did take this before Design Review Board and Planning Commission as well, and they both passed it, and are in favor of it.
Yeah. One thing that I will, oh, sorry, can I?
Go ahead.
Please, sorry. One thing that I will add, I will co-sign on Monty's sentiment. I really think that Second Street business owners really feel like an afterthought. I think that really bugs them. I think that this is a first step in making them feel welcomed and like they are part of the downtown. I'm super excited about it. Every time I bring a family member back home, that's from here back home, they flip out over those lights. So I can't wait to see what's going on down Second Street, and it's well. They're well deserving of that little piece of pizzazz.
Sure.
Oh my goodness.
Hot topic.
Thank you, Chair. I just, and Mr. Islini, if I'm off base here, please intercept, but the point that this is just more of an administrative higher level thing. The lights are great. It may behoove us collectively as a government and legislative process. The light project we're seeing as a light project, but in reality, it's actually 4 bigger projects that cost more money than the number we're seeing on our paper. Moving forward, I didn't really see a high-level project broke down into phases for this, and I think that's where Mr. Eastling was getting how much more money, because we don't know the additional phases. We didn't know they were coming in to pull out the pools. Just might be a higher level in the request sheet or something to kind of, this is the outline, and this is just this number for this portion of that project. The sentiment is you pay for it and you get into a project and you don't know where the end point is. Right? This might just be phase 1. Phase 4 may be another $100,000 that, well, you guys, we started it, we need to do phase 4. But that's kind of the sentiment of some of the projects we've seen recently. So it might behoove us just collectively as a council and the administrative side of things to be on the same page as the higher level of the projects that are coming in. So that's all I have.
Makes sense, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Tedek, you said First Energy is charging us $18,000?
That's correct, because being a utility, they own the poles. So we are not allowed with our contractor or city crews to remove their pole. So to recoup their cost to come out and take the pole down with the truck, with the crane, and remove it, they have to charge us a cost. So there was an $18,000 estimate to do that work, to remove all the poles and their equipment.
Given what was just said here, the sentiment is those poles are trash, are they not? They are. So how much would it take?
Utility, there's still a cost to them that they had to estimate and pass that on to the user, and that would be us then.
So how much would it have cost them to replace these crap poles?
It wouldn't have cost us to replace those poles.
They would have charged us to.
And they're not willing to donate some of this time and effort to get rid of their ugly poles to.
You're talking about First Energy here.
Yeah, you're talking
And it's a monopoly.
Sorry,
got
that would
second
take
or
away
third
from House
energy
Bill
to go
6 money. What other costs are incurred in this? You said 18,000 for here. President Greer said there was this, that, and 2 more?
Oh, I just heard 4
think he was
phases from, I don't know. what
giving
the
examples.
phases-
No, I mean, so this has to be done in phases, right? TUS was done in phases. So as money is allocated in the budget for that year, I mean, we can plan for more lights, because we're only doing 2 blocks. We all know that Second Street is larger than that. So this is a phased approach. We don't know what those phases or that money is gonna look like in the future, so that's why this is before you right now for just that section. And Mr. Tedek, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the 122 gets those light poles up, the lights on, and it's done for those two blocks.
Ms. Gerhart?
Okay, I'm sorry. Do we have to pay for the lights? I know this is the installation,
the-
it's the
that's what
removal.
the
The lights are in that
122
cost? Okay,
Yeah.
Weren't included in everything.
awesome.
So
All I was
we
gonna
just-
say earlier was what I liked you pointing out, like, all this is great, we can still ask about how much would we be looking at as a total.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's what Mr. Easterling was kinda getting at.
Because like you said, you know, this will pay to put the lights up and everything, but we still have to remove the poles, so that is another 18,000. Mr. Tiedecke, did you have something? Okay, sorry, I thought you, Ms. Hager.
For Mr. Tiedecke, you said that it was an $18,000 estimate.
Not
Is-
to exceed. So
Oh, not to exceed.
I would still be hopeful when their crews come out and find that several of the poles have already fallen over and don't exist, that maybe the reference and the bill will less when they send us the final.
Okay, thank you.
I think so.
That might be helpful.
Can we go knock a few more down quietly?
Anyways. Okay, are there any other questions or remarks regarding this piece of legislation? Next, we've got ordinance 15-2025, title Create New Fund for CO2 Smoke Detectors. This ordinance would authorize the Director of Finance to create a new revenue fund, the CO2/smoke detector fund, and declaring an emergency. So, imagine this would, I know our fire department, now will put smoke detectors in, homes. There's a form you can fill out right on the city's website. They'll call you, schedule an appointment. It's a great thing, and I feel like a lot of residents don't know about this. Although, Mayor, isn't this something that you, let people know when they move in, like in their little welcome packet that you give them?
Yeah, new resident welcome packet. We started this program with the fire department a number of years ago, soliciting donations from the Lowe's and Home Depots and others. I believe the fire union and others have contributed cash to purchase some of these as well. With me, I don't have the stats of how many they've installed, but it's quite a few.
Yeah. But they're adding this CO2 because I don't think that's one that they did prior.
Isn't this from the rental registration fee?
This is 1% of from the rental registration will
Right.
go to this fund.
So $2 per 200.
Or 20 cents.
Yeah.
200.
I don't think this taking effect for the rentals, so I think this is just for owner occupied. Am I correct?
I don't think so.
I think it's for rentals, cause it's from rental
I
registration.
mean, the finance director's back there, he gets to speak, I could imagine.
Yeah, this creation of this new fund is directly in conjunction with the change in rental registration, because there is the change in the wording in the rental registration ordinance that states that 1% of every dollar collected in rental registration fee needs to be set in a separate fund. This is the creation of that separate fund. That separate fund then goes towards CO2 and smoke detectors being installed by our fire department in rental homes.
Okay.
So
This is something new, right, Jeremy?
this is part of the rental registration.
Because I remember I had an issue with that. They wouldn't do.
Yeah, this is different than the program that the mayor mentioned, that we've teamed up with the fire department for. This is strictly on the rental registration side of
Yeah.
things and the rental units. So that's the creation of that fund. I'm asking you guys to vote on and create for us, so.
So currently, you have to be a homeowner to receive the smoke detectors, owner occupied, but this would.
Cover rentals.
Rentals, yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So, Ms. Gerhart?
You can actually be a renter and get a smoke detector also. Doesn't have to be owner occupied.
Yeah, but they wouldn't install it though. Previously.
I'm just saying
You can
that
get the detector.
they came and
Some
installed in rentals, yeah. I don't think that they,
That's good to know.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right, and then, next we've got, the second reading of ordinance 2-2025, which Ms. Gerhart said we could discuss now. This is, to enter in a contract with Haas and Staub Architects an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with Haas and Staff Architects for architectural services for schematic design for City Hall and Justice Center project in the city of Barberton, and cost not to exceed $104,200, and declaring an emergency. The bulk of this would be paid for by the money we received from the foundation. So we'll go ahead and open this up for discussion from all of council. If you guys are comfortable with voting on this evening rather than going 3 readings. If anybody's got a comment here, Ms. Gearhart.
First of all, thank you, Mayor, for getting the $100,000 for this to be paid for. I still view them as separate things. We're getting the $100,000 and we can put it in our coffer, or it's in our coffer. We can let it sit in our coffer. I don't think we're ready for schematic drawings based on we haven't gone to the foundation for the ask for the project, not the architectural drawings, for the money for the project. 2 different things. And we haven't brought the plans in to discuss, aside from going to the foundation to ask for the money, to be discussed at council. So I'm not sure why we'd get to the next step of drawings before those 2 things are in place.
Okay, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Tedeki, Mr. Mayor, how long would it take for schematic drawings to be completed? Just rough estimate. I know it's not something that you do every day, but.
I'm going to say a speedy approach, it could be 3 to 5 months, because you're really meeting, like, part of that building will be designed around the needs of council. So we're going to need to try and understand that section of the building and work with those that are going to be using the space to determine how to right size with best practice, how council would be using the space, how you would want your offices set up, where council would interact with the public. So every single user will be sitting down individually and kind of right size and kind of schematically designing those spaces along with the flow of the building. So how quickly can we set up those interviews and sit down and have those interactions and understanding, make some design plan changes, then bring it back to each group to continue that give and take and discussion with each. I'm going to say that could be 3 to 5 months, which again, getting started on that now only continues the process to keep the whole large process better on track.
And Mr. Mayor, is the foundation taking the grant request up at their May 16th meeting?
No, March.
March, I'm sorry, I apologize, March. So,
So we're working on the term sheet right now. I believe I mentioned before, a lot of things have changed, and, a slight change in interest rate can change the whole model, right? So that's being worked on. I spoke with Mr. Watson today. Hopefully that's done by the end of the week. I mean, things are continuing to move. And if there's 50 steps in the process, we've got a lot of steps to get to. We've already been, we've been working on this for years. And so we're so close right now, and that next step is that schematic drawing or design. Keeps everything moving. It's already been done for this facility. It has to be done over at 40 West Tusk.
Another reading.
And that would be the first building to be renovated. So then the administration can move out, and then the work can get started here. So there's more room here for the operations.
Ms. Gearhart.
I'm sorry, Mr. Heidick. I know it's been needed for years. It's been needed since 1958. The plans for the First Merit Building came to council in October of '23, and that wasn't most of us. They haven't been back in front of council, except for in August, when it was more just about asking the foundation for the money. Mr. Dotson explained in his email that it would only maybe put us behind 3 months if we waited to go for schematic drawings until we had the ask into the foundation, until the plans were brought to council. Is that, in light of the almost 70-year wait, is 3 months so that we feel better about doing this that hard to do?
I mean, there's a lot of things that are time sensitive, so I can't accurately address that or answer that. 3 to 5 months, we'll say, right? we want to take every step we can with city council, but, you know, we've got to go to bond council, and we've got to set that up. And there's a whole plethora of things that have to be done behind the scenes to secure funding, not only from the foundation, but to make sure that it's all, that capital stack is all put together. And a change here or there changes the whole model. Now, maybe not drastically, but we've got to make sure that these steps are being taken. Holding back 3 to 5 months, does that, in the grand scheme of things, change everything that much? I'm not sure. I think that answer is easily done after the fact, saying, no, it did not, looking back, or yes, it did.
But so getting the bond approved, getting the finances approved for the foundation could be the first step versus going for schematic drawings then? Because we only have the funds for the schematic drawings.
So bond council is, well, there's one in Chicago and New York. So we may have to go there and put on a presentation. Well, you just don't do that and win, right? You have to set up a presentation, you have to schedule it with them. And they want to know that this stuff is done. They don't want to rate a city if they don't know what the project is. So you have to have the schematic design done.
They won't do it off of conceptual?
No. I mean, these are rating agencies. These are big companies.
That's what I was gonna say. I see where you're coming from, but at the same time, I almost wish we had these schematic drawings sooner and they were already done before we even go to the foundation and say, we need money to help pay for this project, because then we can show them exactly what we're working towards. You know what I mean? I feel like it could go both ways. Mr. Tiedecke.
So that was, you literally said what I was going to say is the sooner, the more information you can continue to gather about your project in the early stages, better sets you up for success as the project continues. So this several month process to continue with a funded process to get the architects, engineers to better understand things we might not know yet about that building only sets up the process for when you do get the design build team in there to start pricing based on the funding we gather. We're better set to have those meetings and continue, this process. So I feel this is a very valuable step to the process, which again, we've already completed in this building. It'd be nice to continue it on that building down the street to get it to the same point.
Mr. Heidig.
Thank you, Chair. I just don't feel that any delay in getting this one passed any delay is not going to help us.
Mm-hmm.
Get him to Chicago, get us the bond rating, what else are we going to do with that building? I know Councilor Gerhart and I talked about the former pit stop property. It's the site of the Justice Center project. What was that, like 14 million before COVID? What would that be now, about 30? That's out the window. Am I correct?
16.
What are we gonna do? How long is that building sat empty?
Right.
We're moving into that thing. Okay, we're close. We're moving into it.
Yeah.
All that has to happen now is getting the plans, getting all this, getting the foundation on board, which through different talks and channels, we're getting closer with them every day.
So you're on board with voting on this
I am,
evening?
because even
Okay.
if something's delayed 3 to 5 months, you're talking about working inside the building, working outside the building. There's ice out there that isn't gonna be melted by April. 3 months could be a lot.
It's Ohio.
Yeah. Mr. Harris.
I got a quick question here. From my understanding, we already have schematic designs for the Justice Center project, correct?
The schematic plans are much further along for this building, yes.
Okay. Because I was just looking at the ordinance, it says City Hall and Justice Center project. But the schematic designs would just be for City Hall, correct?
The lion's share of it is, but as we're still moving forward, the offices that are here, there's still some valuable things we might need to know about this building that would be useful over there, so I didn't want to limit one building for this study, because the consultant has so much information already with how the offices serve here and with the Masonic Temple items coming over into this building, we've been developing a plan with how to reuse either in this building or that building, kind of as part of that reuse plan of some of the items that are being removed. So I didn't, again, want to limit it just to that building over there, you know, for what the consultant could be working on.
Mrs. Miller.
Thank you. Just for an example, for my department in this building, whenever folks leave, they just literally wrote law department over a suite of offices. I mean, that can't possibly work. I have 4 prosecutors, I have staff. I mean, I got it, we're gonna go in this area, but we've never had any in-depth conversation about, well, you know, victims sit here and I need a flow of people through here. And that isn't a criticism at all, but that just tells you that they've done a lot of work, but we didn't do any of that kind of work, the kind of work they're talking about for down there. So it definitely has to be done for me at least. I can't speak for anybody else in the building.
So they've already,
Go ahead.
they've already started on schematic drawings for this building, but they haven't had that conversation with you yet?
No, they did like I'm going to use my words, not engineer Mike Tedecki words. They kind of said, here's what will fit in these areas, right? And for sure, our office will fit in the area they said. But I never had a conversation because I didn't, trust me, I don't go to meetings I don't need to be at. And I just didn't keep going to the meetings, not because he was excluding me, but because I just need to have a conversation at some point, like victims will walk in this door, witnesses will walk in this door, Shauna would sit here, Hannah would sit here. I didn't have that. But that's not their fault. I'm saying they allotted me a space. It's for sure the space is good. But those very specific things, when you get down to that nitty gritty, is what Mike Tedecki's talking about, and I agree with him. They did where's the sewer line going to be? Where's the elevator going to be? That's done. But we just need to have a conversation about that, and that's part of that.
No, I agree the conversation needs to happen. I just think that the ask to the foundation for the money needs to happen first, and it needs to be talked about at council. So I'm still on that, but we can vote for it tonight. So,
I just got one question.
Yeah, Mr. Easton.
So, once you get schematics, is that going out for bid for contracts? Or are we doing reverse engineering based off of engineered, not to exceed or so much per square foot or that nature? What's gonna set the bond or how much financing we're gonna get? Where's that number coming from?
So that comes from that term sheet that we're putting together. We will not be going out for bid at that point. So there's still some things to work through before we go out for bid on a contractor or how that is designed.
So we don't have a ceiling we're not gonna exceed on this building, basically,
Well,
for costs?
we've gone out and gotten initial estimates from several contractors, and they're all about the same. And I don't have those figures with me.
Well, no, I'm not asking for it. I'm asking is, are we going, before we get the financing, are we gonna have set numbers? Or are we gonna promise the city this beautiful building and then finance, get less, and then because the prices are higher? And then do reverse engineering and end up with a generic city hall?
Right.
For, you know,
No,
gobs of money.
All of that's got to be solidified first, and you know better than probably anyone the change in construction material.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a lot of avenues we can go down, and those are some of those things, and we're crunching those numbers as well. So Mr. Heideke, Councilman Heideke brought up before, you know, you don't want to get into 2 newly renovated buildings and then have something go wrong in 3 years or 10 years, right? They're not brand new builds, but they're pretty darn close. So, yeah, we need to confirm and solidify all those numbers and where that money's going. And we have to do that before we get rated.
Okay. And do we have as-built for the First Merit, so we're not re-engineering sewers that exist?
Yeah, we were able to find the original architectural firm
Okay.
and have full set of drawings that have already been in the first steps scanned into the computers, so we have all the spaces and all the walls and and we've been in there numerous times already going over all the mechanical, electrical, roof structure, fire suppression, so we got a good handle on the building itself. Now it's dialing in on the use of the building and where everybody fits in.
Real quick, I'm trying to remember, I remember walking through the first Merit building. Was that with you guys?
Mm-hmm.
We did.
Mayor
Okay.
took us on a tour there.
Okay.
Was it before we were
Mr.
sworn in?
Easterling has not been in there.
Yeah, before we were sworn in.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because it feels like it's been forever.
Yeah.
So I was just curious, but I don't know. I honestly don't think it would be a bad idea to try to find a time to go out there again if we're able to. Just to
Oh, we
get
own
an
it.
idea. I know, but I'm just saying. Especially, with Mr. Easterling and his expertise that he's got, I think it would be beneficial to go through there again at some point, just as a side note.
Do you have conceptual plans, Mr. Easterling?
Never seen.
Okay.
Mr. Harris, did you have something?
I just want to say that I think we need to let this go to another reading. Too many questions. Not enough answers. Putting the cart before the horse. I wish we had expend this amount of energy on redoing our water lines or what have you. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? Anything? Yeah.
It's been, I was going to ask it afterwards. Mrs. Miller, Law Director, mentioned that she has never had that conversation. Is the drawing, that schematic, is that complete for this building, or is she on the list still to be talked to?
Well, it is not complete. I mean, the total design cost for a magnitude of a project like we're talking is going to be close to several $1 million. So the $100,000 will not ever complete this portion of the work. So, for instance, this building, the highest critical components of where the judges get in and out of the building separately from, people going to court, took a lot of priority on how the layout of this building is. Again, Ms. Miller said her office space. We know her office space fits everything of what her law department should be. It's a much larger area. We've not dialed into exactly the flow of her building like she said. However, we spent a lot more detail with some of the more critical areas to hone them in better, a lot with the courts, judges, police, on how to get people in and out of custody and so forth down below. More time was spent on some of those because to get that right really had to dictate structure changes to the building that might have to accommodate that to give us the idea to get our costs a little bit more dialed in. So interior walls sometimes in the space is less costly during construction than figuring out how to get, the additions in for the police building, tornado structures, things like that. We spent more time on because it had a higher impact on cost.
Are we expecting those conversations to happen on the new building? If this building was used as an example, but we're finding out that it's not complete. Is it going to be complete?
I want to be clear. It's not incomplete. Everything he said is true. It's so much more important to find out where you're going to put a sally port and where should the elevators go and how do the judges get in and out. Then where is Lisa's door going to be, right? So that they planned all of that without me is 100% correct. I don't have the foggiest idea of how you run a sally port or anything or elevators or anything like that. All I was trying to say was there is some, I'll use my word, tweaking that would need to be done here. Over there, it's very clear by looking at them, those are just, again, my word, ideas, right? All of council should fit here. All of utilities should fit here. All of finance should fit here. But no one went and said the light switches will be here. I mean, that's not what that one was. This one was more specific because of the reasons that he spoke of.
Thank you for the clarification, Mrs. Miller. The reason I asked is because Michael Tiadecki, the director, did state that all those would be talked about in the new one. So I just wanted
Down the
clarification.
street.
Correct.
Right,
Right.
not here though.
Yes.
Right.
That's what I was
Yeah.
referring to. So, thank you.
Okay. If there are no other comments about this, I will say, as I said, I'm personally comfortable with voting on this tonight. However, since Mr. Harris and Ms. Gerhart both have expressed their opinions about still having some questions, I think just out of respect for them, and I don't know how everybody else feels, but we'll just keep it second reading only tonight, and we'll vote on it next time. So that'll be that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to go ahead and open this up for miscellaneous discussion for finance and personnel. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Chair. Budget, Mr. Mayor.
Busy on this phone.
An estimated time we'll have it in front of us.
I've got a few more departments to work with, to meet with. My biggest struggle, I think a lot of us have the biggest struggles, it's a new software system. And it's not as, in my opinion, it's not as easy to navigate as the previous budget cycles with the other system. So.
Thank you.
All right. And Mayor, can you remind me what the date was for the meeting at the foundation where that's going to be presented?
The grant?
Yep.
It's in March, I'm not sure the
16th.
exact date.
I think it's March
March
16th.
16th. Just for my notes. Okay. With no other miscellaneous, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And a second? Thank you. We are adjourned at 7:12.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. That concludes our individual committee meetings. We are going to take like a 5-10 minute break, and we'll come back and resume.
I'm liking these Japanese ones. They're super duper fine.
I have super fine ones I like too. Yeah. I do like index cards for certain things I keep track of.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started.
I like there.
Again,
Just
one
like a
more
good
time, just ensure your cell
medium
phones on silent, are off, and microphones are turned on for council members. Today is Monday, January 27th, 2025. This is a regular legislating of Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 7:30 PM. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by invocation by Mrs. Thompson.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we gather this evening asking for wisdom and guidance to make the best decisions for our community. We seek to serve with respect for all. Please keep our military and first responders safe. In the Lord's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Clerk, please call the roll.
President Greer.
Present?
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mrs. Thompson.
Here.
Mrs. Hager.
Here.
Mr. Easterling.
Here.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mrs. Beck.
Here.
Ms. Gerhart.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here. All right, approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes of the executive session held on Thursday, January 2nd, 2025, as presented. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve the minutes of the executive session from Thursday, January 2nd, 2025.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Heidick's motion to approve the minutes from the executive session held Thursday, January 2nd, 2025.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to approve the minutes of the executive session held on Thursday, January 2nd, 2025, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are adopted. Approval of the minutes of the special meeting held on Monday, January 6th, 2025, as presented. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the approval of the minutes of the special meeting held Monday, January 6th, 2025.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Heidick's motion to approve the minutes from the special meeting held January 6th, 2025.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to approve the minutes of the special meeting held on Monday, January 6th, 2025, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are adopted. All right. Approval of the minutes for the executive session held on Thursday, January 9th, 2025, as presented. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve the minutes of the executive session from Thursday, January 9th, 2025.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Heidick's motion.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to approve the minutes of the executive session held on Thursday, January 9th, 2025, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are adopted. All right. Approval of the minutes of the special meeting held on Thursday, January 9th, 2025, as presented. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve the minutes of the special meeting from Thursday, January 9th, 2025.
Thank you. And Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Heidick's motion.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to approve the minutes of the special meeting held on Thursday, January 9th, 2025, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the minutes are adopted. Approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, January 13th, 2025, as presented. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, January 13th, 2025.
Thank you, and I'll ask for a second from Mr. Griffin.
I'd like to second the motion on the minutes that was approved.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and second by Mr. Griffin to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, January 13th, 2025, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are adopted. All right, we're going to move into the finance report. Acceptance of the finance department report for the month of December 2024 as presented. Mr. Heidick? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I am sorry. Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the acceptance of the finance report for the month of December 2024 as presented.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second that motion.
All right. Motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and second by Mr. Heidick to accept the finance department report for the month of December 2024 as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, finance report is accepted. Petitions and claims.
There are none.
Thank you. Matters requested.
Development is first.
Thank you. Citizens addressing council. Last I checked, there were none. First reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 11-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, Authorized Payment Atlantic Emergency Solutions. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Atlantic Emergency Solutions in the amount of $3,926.79 for emergency repairs for Engine 3 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Motion to suspend, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Counselor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and second by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 11-2025.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 11-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Resolution number 12-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, Grant Application. A resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton supports and authorizes the mayor to apply to the Barberton Community Foundation for a grant towards the City Justice Center project in the amount of $100,000 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. For clarification, Mrs. Thompson, this will go first reading attempt today? We're suspending today?
Yeah, we'll suspend.
Okay. Motion for suspension, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Counselor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of resolution number 12-2025.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt resolution number 12-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 13-2025, presented by Mrs. Beck and Mrs. Thompson. Title, Enter into Contract Haywood Electric Incorporated, 2nd Street Festoon Lighting. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with Haywood Electric Incorporated for the 2nd Street Festoon Lighting install for a total bid cost, excuse me, of $122,380.25 and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Beck, clarification, you want to suspend tonight? Read tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Motion for suspension, Mrs. Beck.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, and Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Beck's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Beck and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt, Mrs. Beck.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance 13-2025.
Thank you, and Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Beck's motion on adoption.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Beck and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to adopt ordinance number 13-2025. Are there any remarks? Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to reluctantly support this, but I want to point out that, thank you, Councilor Easterling, I was never privy to an $18,000 extra cost in this project. I'm not sure anyone else was. I'm not comfortable with something like that coming up and having the threshold for the Board of Control being $77,500. That $18,000 would have never came to us, never seen it. Any other incidentals, this could end up being a $200,000 project by the time it's done. So I want to thank you, Councilor Easterling, and thank you, President Greer, for pointing out if there's different parts, we'd like to see it. I'm very disappointed that roll-up costs and things that we weren't privy to were not included in this letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Are there any other remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 14-2025, presented by Mr. Easterling. Excuse me. Title, enter into contract, Kiko. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with Kiko to hold an auction to sell items remaining in 107 5th Street building before the building is demolished and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Motion to suspend, Mr. Easterling.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Ms. Gerhart.
I'm so sorry. The honking distracted me.
I know it's getting, it's like that reverb voice.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Easterling's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Easterling and seconded by Ms. Gerhart to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mr. Easterling.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 14-2025.
Thank you. And Ms. Gerhart.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mr. Easterling's motion on adoption.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Easterling and seconded by Ms. Gerhart to adopt ordinance number 14-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 15-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, Create New Fund, CO2 Smoke Detector Fund. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to create a new revenue fund, the CO2 Smoke Detector Fund, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Motion to suspend, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Councilor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks?
Actually, might be too late, but I'm gonna ask anyway. Is there funding now for this prior to what we're gonna spend? So if someone needs one today, the answer is no.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I wanted.
Thank you, Mr. Easterling. Are there any other remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 15-2025.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion is made by Mrs. Thompson and second by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 15-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 16-2025 presented by Mr. Griffin. Title, enter into contract North Bay Construction Incorporated. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with North Bay Construction Incorporated in the amount of $717,288 for the return sludge pump station improvements at the wastewater treatment plant, WWTP, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Motion to suspend, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mrs. Hager?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mr. Griffin's motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mr. Griffin and second by Mrs. Hager to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 16-2025.
Thank you. And Mrs. Hager?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mr. Griffin's motion on adoption.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Griffin and second by Mrs. Hager to adopt ordinance number 16-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
This ends the first reading.
Second reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 2-2025 presented by Ms. Gerhart and Mrs. Thompson. Title, enter into contract Hasenstaub Architects. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with Hasenstaub Architects for the architectural services for the schematic design for the City Hall and Justice Center project in the city of Barberton, and the cost is not to exceed $104,200 and declaring an emergency. This is the second reading. The first reading was on January 13th, and this will go for 3 readings. And this ends the second reading.
Thank you. Third reading of ordinances and resolutions.
We have none.
Appointments.
There are none.
Miscellaneous and unfinished business. I'll open it up. Is there anything from council? I have one thing regarding the, oh my gosh, the applications for the Charter Review Commission. It was brought up last week which committee we think it should go in. However, it's not outlined in any of our rules. So, with that being said, it's just kind of precedence has been set that it's always been finance. However, rules kind of govern when we get those and stuff. I'll leave it to you, the chair, Ms. Gerhart, to determine if it should go to Rules Committee or if it should go to Finance. And once we figure that out, we'll update our rules to include that in our,
As chair of rules, I think it should go to rules.
okay. We'll have a discussion. We can have it now. It's open.
Can I have a motion? Go ahead.
As chair of finance and personnel, I think it should stay in finance and personnel.
But personnel seems like they're employed by the city. Like, that's why you get the salaries and the Jamie Eisman salary requests. You also have 7 to 8 pieces of legislation every meeting, Taylor.
That's true. I mean, realistically, we're all voting on it, but I think that's why it's been in finance for as long as it has, is because it's finance and personnel.
Yeah,
So
its precedence has been, it goes back 10 years or
I
so.
went back 3 votings, so, and it's every 5 years. It has always been in finance.
That's never an excuse to keep it that way, though.
Sure.
So,
That's right.
I'm just
let's
saying,
clarify. We need to
that
come
was the
up,
rationale used previously.
sure, and that's why we did it that way.
I could also understand it being in rules. It makes sense, but I'm just saying. Either way.
Do we need to have an arm wrestle contest?
Can I have a motion?
No, we'll have
No.
we do need to figure it out, though, at least 24 hours previous to our next committee meeting. Not that it's a big holdup, but we just need to hash that out for this time around. But as rules, we need to incorporate that. It is a gray area. There's really no definition in our rules where it should go, kind of at my discretion. I'm going to let it go to finance, right? But we do need to figure that out.
Okay.
Right.
decision.
Sure.
To go to rules is gonna postpone the appointment for a couple weeks, because the cycle starts today, and you had your committee meeting. So it's on finance, you would present it Monday, and we could vote on it on the first legislative in February, which the date escapes me. However, if we put it on rules, it won't go till the second legislative. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that mess up how
For this time
that's
around,
gonna
but
have to
pre-thought, it would get, they would have to think about it ahead of time to get it in and have enough time, so.
Right.
Mr. Addick?
Thank you, Chair. By doing it that way, we also have to remember that's only one appointment to an entire commission, and the commission by charter has to be seated by a certain time.
That's right. my
End
question
of
was gonna be.
February.
So when the mayor sends the next batch of requests, because time is ticking.
Do
whatever
we-
Committee will be the whole thing.
Then change the rule with what we have coming up in our new rules.
Yeah, we just, it's not, we'll clarify where things can go, but we need to have that discussion. Ms. Garrett?
Do we have any more applicants? I've only
Yes.
seen one.
I've reached out to a number of people. Some have said, some have denied wanting to join. Some have said that they will turn in their application. Hopefully by the end of the week, I can have something in the council's hands. But now I'm asking, who do I address it to?
To finance currently, since it's in the gray area, I'm gonna let finance handle it. Yes, we did receive some other,
Yeah.
not last minute, but
Yeah.
before council.
Because
So
it's still
we have-
open for the rest of this week, correct? Okay.
We've got 2 more coming that'll go on, it's already on the finance agenda.
I just, since we're still on miscellaneous, I wanted to thank you for sending out that ribbon cutting and grand opening to everybody.
Yes.
That was our first one, and we appreciate it. And can you please thank Vanessa for getting that to Lori also? Thank you.
All right. With that settled, I don't have anything else. Is there anything from department heads? Mr. Tedeki?
Sure, I'd like to invite council to a tour of 480 West Tusk. Check your email tomorrow. I'd like, if you've been there, come out again. If you haven't been there, I'd like to work with your schedules to get you in there, try and share with you as much information as we have about the building. Ask questions, we'll try and get you some answers, and if you have questions in the meantime, ask, but hopefully everybody can make it. Check your email.
Got a question?
Thank you.
Can we get 11 by 13 or something while we're there for what you guys are proposing as of now, at least with the,
Sure. I'll try and make as much.
just anything that's shows walls or whatever,
Yeah.
so, okay. Some kind of type of visual.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Tedeki. Anything else from department heads? Mr. Shi?
So I wanted to just go ahead and address you guys. So Southside Leader reached out the other day. I worked with Mark Carr, our street superintendent. They're doing an article on the winter, essentially. So they just had a couple of questions, so I was just going to share our answers. They were asking, other municipalities. But so first question was, how is the winter gone? Our answer was the winter's gone well, with frigid temperature, freaking snowfall, our added challenges, and we experienced employees, or we have experienced employees who are well-equipped and knowledgeable in snow and ice removal. Second question, how much salt have you used so far this winter? So we've used around 2,500 tons of salt during 21 snow events. So I didn't realize until Mark shared this with me that it's 21 snow events. And if you think about it, anytime that we load a truck up to go out and salt, our street garage looks at that as a snow event. Because they're treating the roads, they're trying to make things safe, that kind of thing. So 2,500 tons, and they've covered a total of 8,200 miles of driving. And that was from the 4th of December through the 21st of January. They asked if we still have a lot of salt on hand. Our answer is between what we have in storage and our annual commitment through the COG, we will have plenty of salt for this winter season. How many trucks do we have? We have 10 5-tons equipped with salt and snow plowing capabilities. We have 1 2-ton dump with the same capabilities for alleys, dead ends, and several pickup trucks. Does Barberton have any new equipment? Our response was we don't have any new equipment, but we did add our clear span with our clear lane. And I mean, when you think of equipment, we have some newer trucks, but like we didn't get any crazy new pre-wetting technologies or inserts or anything like that. And to be honest with you, clear lane, we've used it once. We've used about 50 ton of it. It was for one event when the temperatures dropped below 15 degrees. And then they asked if there was any reminders or suggestions for drivers. And Mark Carr put this together, and he said, he kept it pretty simple. Remember to reduce your speeds and your following distance, and give plows room to work. Check on your elderly neighbors, and be patient. So I mean, those are all really good things, to deal with this winter. So that was what we put together. Those were the questions that were asked. Does anybody have any questions about snow and ice? Yes.
I know that we're not gonna run out of salt, but what would happen if a city did run out of salt? Can they get more salt somewhere?
So I mean, we commit to so many tons every year. So we committed to 1,800. We've got an order of 500 ton in right now. So we've got 1,300. Could you? There are other contracts through ODOT and other suppliers. Our CUE actually reached out to Cargill, which is a supplier. And right now, Cargill can't commit any extras over your allotted commitment because they have to be able to make sure they have enough to fulfill everyone's
The other commitments.
allotted commitment.
Okay.
So that's the kind of thing that we're dealing with. Hopefully, we don't run into that problem, and I don't think we will because we committed the proper amount this year.
Yeah, we feel prepared. Thank you.
Yep.
Yep, I like
Yes,
that.
Ms. Beck.
Isn't that plus or minus 20% though?
It is plus or minus 20%.
So, like,
So it's
our cap is not really our cap.
2,160 ton or something like that, I think is what Mark figured out. Any other questions? Yes, Ms.
I just want to say thanks for the fun facts. 'cause
Oh, absolutely.
That's kind of very interesting to share. And just to know that there's been 21 snow events that required them to go out.
Again, like I said, that was something that was knowledge to me, and
Yeah.
I enjoyed the Mark putting this together and working with him to get something so that the leader could include us in their article. Mr. Greer, did you have?
I just wanted to say thank you for the transparency.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say, please thank, I mean, I know winter's not over yet, but please thank the street guys. They've done a great job. I moved from Lincoln, so I'm not over there anymore, but now I'm on State Street, which is really busy.
Okay.
They've done a great job with keeping up the roads. I know people are still gonna gripe. They're never gonna be happy unless the plows sit right outside the front of their house and plow as soon as the snowflake hits, but they've done an excellent job of keeping up on the roads this winter.
Thank you. Any other questions about snow? So I wanted to talk about one more thing real quick too. So it was brought to my attention today, and it's, so our property maintenance techs and inspectors look at many, many different things. One of the things they've been tasked with in the past, is pulling signs off utility poles. It was brought to my attention today that we have some residents that are attaching other things to utility poles, whether it's, corn cob bird feeders, other bird feeders and things that are attached to the wooden poles. Well, those poles they don't belong to the city, they don't belong to the homeowner, they actually belong to the utility company, and that's not allowed. That's stuff that shouldn't be put on the poles. So if you see your constituents or your constituents ask, what do you think about me putting this bird feeder on this telephone pole? Please discourage them. They sell stakes and posts and stuff you can put in your yard to mount that kind of stuff on. So just another thing to kind of keep an eye when you guys are out and about, just as a reminder. So,
I'll just take them down and take them to my house and put them in my backyard.
Lord
That's
knows,
it.
Lord
Thanks
knows
very
what
much.
First Energy
Oh,
charge.
yeah.
If we see anything up on a telephone pole in our ward, are we allowed to remove it? Like
So
the-
that's a
Is that a
good
union
question. Our law director just walked out. I don't believe, I looked through our ordinance. I don't believe we have a sign ordinance that says you can't put up temporary signs, but as far as attaching bird feeders and other things to the poles, I don't know that we have any ordinance.
I'd have to look for it. There's an ordinance not attaching things to utility poles. First Energy and others have rules as well. Mowing your yard, plowing, cash for your house, we typically try to reach out to those people and say, I know this costs money, remove your sign, or the city will, or the utility company. And the utility company has come through and they'll cut them down and throw them away. And if that's someone's advertising budget, it's in the trash. So we try to deter people from doing that because they're not going to last.
I had that situation last year with Hoff Roofing, and they bolted it. So I went out and I couldn't get it down, so I invested in a toolbox for my vehicle so I'd be prepared. So I just wanted to make sure I was allowed to take this stuff down.
Better put a step ladder in there too, because some of them use
Yeah, they'll put
a
step
ladder to
back in the
stick
truck.
them 12 feet up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or did we just need to put it in with a ticket, was what I was,
Put it
am I
in with
allowed
a
to take it
ticket.
down, or do I need to do a ticket?
City guys.
For safety reasons, it's best to put it in. So our guys can do it.
Okay. I like safety.
You'll get a grievance.
Mayor. You start taking things down, you don't know who's on the other end of that, so just put in a ticket.
One of the reasons, I don't know how many utility workers climb the poles versus a bucket truck, but if you got nails and tacks and things sticking out, they're gonna get hurt, they're gonna get stuck. So that's one of the main reasons. Plus line of sight, you can't see around the utility pole.
Yeah,
There's many reasons why it's not allowed.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Director Chief. Is there anything?
Questions? I didn't see any other questions.
All right, wait,
Oh, nope, sorry, I was looking at the time.
alrighty. Anything else? No, communication from the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I have an eagle eye.
First, I want to
People
thank
move.
Melanie from Main Street for coming in today. Main Street's been a great addition to the revitalization efforts that we've been, our efforts downtown here that we've undertaken. Next, unfortunately, Change for Change, kind of mentioned by Councilman Harris, had to be canceled last week as a water main break happened right in front of the VFW, so they were closed for a few days. That has been fixed. That's, Change for Change has been rescheduled at the VFW in May for Quilts of Valor. In terms of water main breaks, we all know it's that time of the year. We've had a number of breaks, some major ones throughout town, but we're not alone. We check with the surrounding communities, and everyone's experiencing these water breaks during these cold snaps that we've had. But I appreciate the comments for our crews in the service department, either fixing the water main breaks or the potholes and addressing the salt and ice buildup as well. They do a great job. As I mentioned earlier, we're continuing to work on the 2025 budget, have a few more budgets to complete. Anticipating getting that to council here very soon and then we'll start scheduling budget hearings. 2 new police cruisers have been received. They'll be in service soon. I believe one is in service and the other one is being outfitted. As mentioned previously, the radios for police and service have been installed, obviously tonight with a slight overage in the cost. So I appreciate your committee approving that for 2 weeks from now for full vote. Residents may have received a notice from Omni Fiber. You may have gotten some calls. It's a fiber company. They'll be running fiber throughout the city in the right-of-way. We have met with them. Definitely more information will be coming out soon with start dates, etc. They are allowed in the right-of-way to install fiber. You may have seen fiber being installed kind of sporadically throughout the city. This is not part of the county's fiber expansion. Their fiber expansion is in the northern part of the county right now, and they are moving and connecting all 31 communities with fiber. This is a separate fiber company. Not only are they running the fiber, installing it, they will provide a service too, if you want to use it. So really educating residents that there is a right-of-way, that people are allowed to, utility companies like fiber are allowed in your right-of-way. We will continue to work with them to make sure we know where they're at, and we'll communicate that with you, making sure that they stay on the schedule that they're telling us they're staying on. But also, once they finish and we get into the spring and summer months, that they restore the yards like they're supposed to as well. So kind of, again, another phased approach project of making sure that things and all the boxes are checked. So if you have questions, you receive questions from residents, please don't hesitate to reach out. Okay. That's all I have. Yes.
So Omni Fiber's running their lines. Does that mean AT&T runs lines and then Spectrum, or can they all use fiber? Or do they each own their own fiber, so now everybody has to run their own fiber?
It's my understanding they could do either one. They could all run their own fiber lines. One person could run fiber lines and they could pay that company to be a part of that fiber. I'm not sure how that's being worked out, because I know we do have some AT&T fiber throughout the community. We do have some, I'm not sure how much Spectrum we have. There's other companies that may just run the fiber, but they don't supply the service.
Right.
So,
Okay.
you know.
I've heard about that one
Yeah.
before.
Like Verizon.
So,
Okay.
you know, typically around hospitals, banks, things like that, you'll find the fiber. 480 West Tusk already has fiber. So we're basically going from a community with very little fiber to a plethora of fiber.
Fiber everywhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a game changer. You get that to your house, a full gig, or to your business, it's a game changer.
Okay.
So, yes.
So can we expect door-to-door sales like we have Spectrum trying to sell?
So anyone that's
Get you to sign
soliciting
up for
door-to-door
fiber.
has to get a permit through the police department. So I'm not sure, I believe they've given out, I know last year they gave out one permit, and I'm not sure who that was to.
Okay.
Might have been more to a gas company, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But if you have any residents that say, hey, someone's come to my door trying to sell me something, please let us know.
Yep.
So we can check with the police department. A lot of times these companies will fly in people from out of state. And, you know, we've actually, myself and my assistant have actually gone out and confronted people in neighborhoods who were kind of badgering our residents.
Yeah, I've asked to see their permit,
Yeah.
so, yep.
So we've gone out a few times and, you know, they get kind of confrontational and then they say, well, I'm going to call the police. And we say, well, so can we? Go ahead, call them. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't badger
Well,
our
arrest the
residents. You
person that
can't,
doesn't have
you need a
permit.
permit. There's a process and rules you have to follow.
Sure.
I would encourage you to call the police department. A couple weeks ago, I ran into somebody that was trying to sell solar panels, energy. He was aggressive. Some other words I could use, but I won't. I called the station. They made contact with the guy, got his name. You get one warning. After that, here's your citation for soliciting. That's, you know, a lot of our residents are getting bombarded by these people that shouldn't be here. So I would encourage you to call the police department. They have a record of everybody that has permits and who don't.
Yes.
Do we require like Omni for a performance bond or anything, so if they don't come back and do the housekeeping, that we have money to fix stuff left behind?
So I gotta also be kind of overseeing a lot of the install, working with the building department to make sure, like when the gas company comes in and does their gas lines and service lines, we chase them to make sure they follow our standards. We've actually just revamped all our roadway and utility standard drawings, so they have a brand new copy of that. We'll be chasing them to make sure, neighborhood by neighborhood, that they do follow the restoration according to how we want it done and according to our standards. I think this is a great opportunity for Barberton to have this really high-speed internet in town accessible right to your door. We're in contact with them, I'll remind them, thank you for pointing that out, I did not know that. I'll remind them that they can't do that without a permit. If I find out they get a permit, you'll be aware of that also. But short term, any questions at all, I think when they start, we are already outlining with them the target neighborhoods they want to begin. What they're going to do is they're going to go out and mark where they want to physically put the lines and boxes with white paint, because when they start, they're telling us they want to have 12 to 15 different crews putting in this with restoration immediately behind it. So it will go pretty rapidly, and we want to make sure right from the get-go, we know where they're going. We're helping with some of the marking of our own utilities to make sure our utilities are safe, along with all the restoration. Some of the next phase of the budget, when we get to resurfacing, I'm going to cross-check the resurfacing list with this company to make darn sure any street that we're going to resurface or do, that they're going to have to jump out ahead of our resurfacing, so they're not even going to dig in a freshly resurfaced street, even if they are going to restore it. So we're going to try and stay ahead of some of those things too.
All right. I know we're running late, but just one question for the right-of-way. This has come up multiple times in the past with the gas line. A lot of you guys are newer, maybe have never experienced, you get flooded with calls. Can you explain what the right-of-way is? It's not always the devil strip. How far in the yard? Some people have yards and when it happens, calls flood in about, they're in my yard, so what is?
It's not always the case, but if you have sidewalk, generally the back of sidewalk where your grass begins all the way to the other side of the road to the back of the sidewalk, general rule of thumb, that's a pretty good approximation of where it is. If you don't have sidewalk, you can only imagine where sidewalk would be with devil strip but again, a lot of times, if you look on the property sheet of your specific lot, a lot of times they'll show where that line is.
All right.
I would also look at fire hydrants. I've seen some properties that the fire hydrant seems like it's 15 feet from the street, and that might be a good assumption that the right-of-way goes that far. So everyone's properties, it's not, like Mr. Teodecki said, it's not textbook 3 feet or 5 feet or anything like that. Everything's a little different.
I know just from general work, it's typically 30 feet from center of the road. That's your safe zone.
Could we be kept up to date on where Omnifiber is going to be going? So we can kind of, a little bit stay ahead of, I'm gonna be getting calls from Stratford, I'm gonna be getting calls from Yale, or, can we just put it out there like, hey, we're gonna be over here.
So we're getting status updates from them weekly, and they told us generally where they wanted to start, but they've not given us the plan yet to the building department to show exactly where that is.
I understand it's not done
when
now.
I get that and
Yeah.
we start understanding with their physical plan, we can share that information.
Yeah. It's kind of the worst when somebody asks you something, I don't know, and it's a Saturday at 8 o'clock. I'm not calling Todd, So if any little thing I can be kept up on,
Absolutely.
wonderful.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. With nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn, Mr. Heidick?
Mr. President, motion to adjourn.
Thank you. And Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and second by Mrs. Thompson that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Didn't think so. This meeting is adjourned at 8:14 PM.